It is somewhat hard to believe that the baseball regular season is already right about a quarter of the way complete. So let's talk about what we've seen so far with Dodger beat writer Jack Harris of the LA Times. Jack, always a pleasure to see you. I'm going to give you first pitch here. What is the most intriguing storyline that you've covered with this Dodgers team so far this season?
I think if you just kind of look at the totality of their season to this point, it's amazing to see how well they're doing, even though they weren't playing that well for a lot of the opening month of the season. Mookie Betts missed some time coming back from the stomach virus he had at the start of the year. Freddie Freeman was on the IL with an ankle injury. Shohei Ohtani was gone for a couple days for the birth of his child. They've had pitching injuries. They've had some defensive lapses. Like, there were a lot of things that you could poke some holes in, and yet they're still on pace to win well over 100 games. They're still in first place in the division. They've had the best record in baseball for a lot of this year. So I think what we've seen so far is that even when things aren't completely synced up, the floor for this team is still really, really high. And I think over the rest of the summer, it's going to be interesting to see how close they can get to hitting their ceiling and kind of being the more complete version of this team that we've kind of seen the last couple weeks here.
Let's talk about some individuals, and I want to start with Yoshi Yamamoto, who made his 8th start on Thursday. And if you look at the entire body of his work this season, he has been absolutely unhittable at times. In fact, if you're voting for the Cy Young Award today, he's probably the front runner. How has he been able to make such a jump from year 1 to year 2?
Yeah, people around the Dodgers point to his confidence, his conviction, and like his comfort level in his second year in the big leagues. Last year you saw in flashes how dominant he could be. He had a great start at Yankee Stadium in the middle of the year. He obviously turned it on in the postseason late in the year, had a great start in the World Series. What you're seeing now is that kind of execution and ability to overwhelm hitters with his pinpoint fastball command, this array of breaking pitches from his splitter to his curveball that guys can't hit. And he's coupled that with an ability to just kind of execute at a really high level every time he takes the mound. Someone who had an interesting perspective on this was Kike Hernandez, who, took Yamamoto out to coffee after he struggled in his first playoff start last year and basically talked with him about, man, you're already one of the best pitchers in the world. You just need to go out there and pitch like it every time. And I think that's what you've seen so far. Somebody with all the talent in the world, who also now has all the confidence that comes with having been in the majors for 1 year. And it's kind of putting that together to, like you said, he's been the best pitcher in the National League so far this season.
Meanwhile, his fellow countryman, Roki Sasaki, obviously the prize of the offseason, came in very highly touted. And he obviously has electric stuff, but he has struggled at times, and it almost seems like he gets in his own head at times. We've seen that emotion pouring out of him while he's pitching in games. What do you make of his start so far, and is it just a little too early? I mean, let's not forget he's 23 years old, a little too early to really make some definitive decisions on him.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the point. This is a guy that, can hit 100 miles an hour with his fastball, has a splitter that some people in the sport think is the best pitch from anybody in the game. The problem with him has just been the consistency, the getting acclimated, and still trying to work towards being a finished product. I mean, he's dealing with a lot of the same hurdles that Yamamoto did last year, coming over to the big leagues for the first time, adjusting to a new league and a new culture and a new country. But he didn't have as much professional experience in Japan as Yamamoto. He's a younger age than Yamamoto was last year. And I think you're seeing somebody who's still probably in the more developmental phase of their career, trying to figure that out at the big league level while he's been working through some delivery stuff, while he hasn't had his best command. So I think the Dodgers overall are happy that even with some of the growing pains he's gone through to this point, his overall numbers have been okay. He's still been productive more times when he's taken the mound than not. I think the question for this year is, can he get to that level where you would really rely on him as a potential key piece of your postseason rotation? Long term, there's very little doubt that he's going to get there, that he'll be an ace caliber pitcher at some point in the big leagues if he stays healthy. The question is just how long that takes and how much time he has this year to kind of get closer to that version of himself.
And due to injuries with the Dodgers, they've essentially been operating with a four-man rotation. They've obviously got Yoshi and Roki, and then you've got Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin. Then the fifth spot is kind of a question mark. We saw Landon Knack throw a really nice game a couple of days ago. And then there's Clayton Kershaw, who's down on the farm working his way back. Your thoughts on that fifth slot, and when may we see Clayton Kershaw?
You're going to see him before too long. He's going to make another rehab start this coming week. He's eligible to come off the injured list next Sunday, May 18th. And you know, the way he's been progressing, he's probably going to be ready to come back at that point. I think one of the interesting things with Kershaw is that, yes, while he's been hurt and recovering, this injury has had to do with his toe and his knee, where he got surgeries this past offseason. This is probably the healthiest his arm has been in at least the last 2 or 3 years. And I think there's some optimism that the Dodgers aren't just going to get a beat up older version of Kershaw when he comes back, that he can come back and be a productive pitcher for them, which, like you said, right now they really need, with Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow still on the injured list. Long term, I think Snell and Glasnow, you know, even though they're dealing with shoulder stuff right now, the Dodgers are still hopeful they're going to be able to get those guys back probably in the next month or two and get them back on track to be the kind of, you know, $100 million+ pitchers they signed them to be. But in the meantime, the rest of the rotation, they just need some length from. Like, they've put a really heavy workload on their bullpen to this point because of the injuries, because of some of the inconsistencies from the other guys outside of Yamamoto. So it'll help when they get Kershaw back. It'll really help when they get Snell and Glasnow back. And their hope is that, again, kind of over the next couple months, they get more consistent production out of the rotation.
All right, Jack, let's wrap it up by taking a wide shot of Major League Baseball and where the threats may be for the Dodgers this season. In my eyes, I see a lot of mediocrity out there. I mean, who's the best team in the American League? Is it the Detroit Tigers? It's not the Yankees, at least not record-wise right now. So where is the threat? And honestly, we haven't seen the Dodgers play a lot of divisional games to this point, so we haven't seen them go up against the Giants or the Padres. What are your thoughts on who's the biggest threat to the Dodgers?
I think the biggest threats, like you said, are within the division right now. When you look at how well the Padres have started, how well the Giants have started, obviously the Diamondbacks have gotten off to a slower start, but are still going to be in the division race. I think when you look at it at this point, you know, when you have 3 or 4 NL teams with, you know, 6 or 7 or 8 of the best records in baseball, it's kind of reminiscent to 2021 when the Dodgers were last trying to defend a World Series title, when they got in that, you know, just kind of crazy NL West race with the Giants, who won 107 games and beat them out by 1 game in the division. And by doing so, put the Dodgers on a much tougher path to try to repeat as world champions, a path that obviously they ran out of gas against the Atlanta Braves that year. So I think that's kind of the biggest concern for the Dodgers now, is that this NL West division is going to be really tough. It's a division they should still win, but given some of the injury problems they're dealing with, some of the other inconsistencies we talked about, you know, there's a reason that they don't have a bigger lead in the NL West right now, that it looks like they're going to be, at least in the short term, in a little bit of a dogfight to try to stay atop the division. And if that continues over the course of the year, if they find themselves having to really put their foot on the gas just to win the division going into the playoffs, it makes everything they need to do in October that much tougher. So when you look around the rest of the sport, nobody can really match the Dodgers talent-wise, roster-wise, and depth-wise. But there are teams that can get hot and play well and have star players. And I think you look at a team like the Padres with some of the stuff the Giants did this offseason to get better. Winning the division could be a tougher task than I think a lot of people probably thought it would be for this team coming into the year. And we've seen before the kind of strain that can put on a group, even as talented as this, if, you know, they're having to try to grind out wins late in the season just to win the division and get a bye in the playoffs and give themselves the easiest path through the postseason.
Jack, I know you're a super busy guy. I really appreciate the time that you take to spend with us.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay, that's Jack Harris, the Dodger beat writer with the LA Times.